Hi, I'm Justin Janowski, and welcome to the Sales Strategies for Christian Coaches podcast. I founded my Christian coaching business, Faith to Influence, in December of 2018, just hoping to make enough to provide for my family that year, which the number I had in mind was $60,000. I ended up collecting over $250,000 as God provided significantly for my business. I also recognize now that I had a few advantages. I knew how to sell in a high integrity, loving way that was also high converting. I knew how to design my offers and my price points in a way that was a win-win for both sides of the conversation. And I also had a great mindset around sales and money that was healthy and empowered. I want to, through this podcast, teach you how to have some of those same things so that you can fulfill on the business that God has called you to. And today I want to talk to you about your keynote speech. Now listen, not every coach needs to have a keynote speech. If you are running a lifestyle coaching business and you just want to make $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 a year, you're going to work with a handful of people, it's going to be word of mouth based, you only need a few clients to fulfill your goal, you don't need keynote speeches. You don't need to be delivering on stages virtually and live. And if that's you, feel free to just skip to another episode or re-listen to one of your favorite episodes that's really applicable to what you need right now. But for many coaches I know who want to build a six-figure business or a multiple six-figure business or someday a seven-figure business, the skill set of speaking is going to be critically important. And it might take its form in you running a live or virtual workshop or master class that you use as a way of displaying your work, providing great value and impact for a free or low price point, and inviting people to the next step. Public speaking could take place through your live retreat or conference or virtual retreat or conference. It also could be something that you engage in on a podcast or a telesummit online when you get to speak to other people's audiences. Or it may be more of a traditional speech where somebody invites you to their conference or to their group and you get to speak to them live or virtually for 15 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour. When that opportunity presents itself, if you want to use speaking as a sales strategy, I love it. I think it's one of the best strategies there is that kind of bridges the gap between what I would call the short game and the long game in business. Short game marketing efforts are things that we're hoping are going to produce sales this week, this month, this quarter to help us grow our business now. Long game marketing strategies are things that are going to help us over the long haul, that if we execute on again and again and again over the next many months, years, and decades, will make sales easier and easier and easier for us over time. Speaking is one of the only strategies in marketing that I feel like does both. It absolutely can deliver in the short term, but it also has the capacity to build credibility and make sales much easier for us long term, especially when you think about speaking on something like a podcast. That speech lives forever. It helps with SEO. It can be found in the future. People who find that podcast and like it might go back and find all the previous episodes and come and stumble upon yours. And so as you get more speaking done in the marketplace, your confidence is going to grow, your audience is going to grow, people are going to resonate with you, and sales will become easier. But it is also a strategy that can lead to a sale right now. It wouldn't be the only strategy, but it's a really good one for you to pursue to create opportunities. And you can create your own stage anytime you want on YouTube or on a podcast, etc. But today I want to talk to you specifically about how to design a true keynote speech. Most of this is my interpretation of what I learned years ago from my friend Pete Vargas, who talked about how to design the speech. And one of the first things that he shared was that we should begin with an opening heart story. Step one of any great speech, begin with an opening heart story where you share something that is vulnerable, honest, true, and it helps people have an emotional experience. It could be that it's funny and they're laughing. It could be that it's heartfelt and they feel it. Oftentimes, a great opening heart story at a keynote speech on a stage somewhere at a conference is going to draw people to you because, as Pete says, it's going to help them recognize that you are ordinary and you're extraordinary. The idea that we're ordinary is that we're vulnerable enough in our opening heart story to share about a time that we experience something that our audience is experiencing now. That's one of the reasons why when I give the opening of this podcast, I remember and tell the story of how I felt really nervous, really scared. I was tossing and turning at night when I first started my business. I was just hoping I could make it. That was my reality. And I know a lot of the coaches who are listening to this podcast can relate to being new, trying to run your coaching business, wondering if you're good enough, wondering if you can make it, wondering if you can make enough to provide for your family, and just hoping you can keep the doors open. When I share that little snippet in the opening heart story or the opening of the podcast, it's to help people recognize the ways in which we're the same. And then the other part of it is through an opening heart story to express the ways in which we're extraordinary, the ways in which we overcame that challenge, the things that we did to achieve at the level that our audience wants to achieve. And so if you are a health and fitness coach and you're speaking at a conference and you lost a lot of weight, talking in your opening heart story about where you were pre-weight loss, what you were experiencing, the fatigue, the exhaustion, the pain of like not fitting into an outfit, or the way you felt about yourself when you looked in the mirror, or some of the challenges you experienced when you were walking upstairs, like that sort of thing that anyone who's ever struggled with their weight and health and fitness can relate to, makes people say, oh, okay, well, this person didn't just have this genetic gift or advantage. Now, by the way, even if you have been healthy and fit your whole life, you probably have a story that's extremely relatable in health and fitness to somebody who has struggled. You had a moment, a day, a week, a month where you were in some sort of pain, or you weren't happy with the results you were getting, or how you were feeling, or how you were looking. And so like sharing that vulnerably has people saying, wow, John's just like me. Susan's just like me. But then when you tell the rest of the story about how you overcame that challenge, how you lost the weight, or how you got yourself into a place of feeling fit or feeling healthy, or letting go of how you look and focusing more on how you feel, or appreciating your body, or having gratitude for like what you already have and who you already are on the journey, like whatever that looks like for you. Listen, I'm not a health and fitness coach. This is a challenge of mine I've had my whole life, right? But the health and fitness coach can tell that story. And ideally, when they tell the finish of the story, the conclusion of that story, their ideal audience is saying, wow, I want to be a little bit more like John. I want to be a little bit more like Susan. So like that's the dynamic we're creating with our opening heart story. Sharon's just like me, and I want to be a little bit more like her. Hopefully, as you hear some of my story, like, wow, Justin's just like me. He was struggling. He was scared. He wasn't sure if it was going to work. He had some self-doubt. And look what he did. Look what he accomplished through God's efforts, through God's provision. Maybe that could happen for me too. Justin's just like me, and I want to be a little bit more like him. I'm hoping for that as I share my stories. And if I'm not getting enough of that, I'm probably not being vulnerable enough. I'm probably hiding. I'm probably trying to be perfect. My authenticity makes it safe for people to want to work with me, and makes it easy for them to see themselves in me. And the work that I've done to accomplish goals that my audience wants to accomplish makes it likely that they're going to say, okay, maybe he can show me the way. This is what we want to establish in an opening heart story. And we want our audience to feel something. For years and years and years, people have shared information through stories. You think about Jesus from the very beginning of the Bible, in the New Testament, like all of his story is him telling stories, parables. He so often taught through story. And one of the reasons why is people lean forward in their seats when they hear a story. It engages us. It's interesting to us. I've got little kids at home, Grace and Gavin. They're 6 and 4 as I'm recording this. They love stories. They lean in for a story. So much more than me telling them something from my own heart that I think is important. But if I illustrate it with a story, it captures them in a different way. And even as adults, we're this way. So a great speech, whether it's a keynote speech at a conference or a speech as the best man or the maid of honor at a wedding, begins with a great opening heart story that helps people feel something. Then step 2 is to actually teach our content. It's the body of the message. Oftentimes the body of the message is going to be the 3 keys to greater energy in your life, or the 7 steps to fulfilling your dream business, or the 5 ways to respond to conflict in your marriage. Like if we find our language around it, oftentimes the body of the message in a great keynote speech is easy to take notes on because people know, okay, there's 3 keys, there's 5 secrets, there's 7 steps, and they're able to take notes on that. And so you teach the actual content. What I believe in a keynote speech is to teach your best stuff, because that's what's going to attract people to wanting more. Don't hold that back for your program, because the truth is great Coaches are like great radio stations. They play the hits. If somebody heard something in your keynote speech and they loved it, and that's why they decided to start working with you, and then you start teaching about that same thing in your program, they're gonna be like, yes, I love this. They're gonna want more of that. So don't be like, oh, I can't teach that. That's my best stuff. Teach your best stuff for free, and then invite people to the next step and closer relationship with you and deeper depth in that topic area. Okay, then after you teach the body, step 3 of the keynote speech is your call to action. So you've opened with an heart story, you've taught your primary lesson. We want to follow that up with a call to action. What should they do next? Now, that might be in some cases your offer. If you're leading a workshop, this is a great workshop structure. And at this point, you're going to say, hey, if you really enjoyed this, we do this every single week in our group program, or I help people one-on-one with this through my one-on-one coaching program. Here are the details of how that works. We do it over this period of time. We offer this, and it costs this much. If you'd like to join us, click this link. Or if you'd like to join us, you've got a pamphlet under your chair that has all the details. You fill that out, bring it to the back of the room, and we can move forward together. We would love to help you. So it could be a real offer as your call to action. In many cases, many speaking opportunities, rather than like a paid offer, it's more of a lead magnet. Your call to action could be, hey, if you enjoyed this, I use it all the time. Go to goodsalespdf.com for a free copy of our 10-step sales process. So if I teach on my 10-step sales process or on sales in general, a really nice call to action is to send them to a free copy of my 10-step sales process, which they're going to pay for with their email address. So it's free, but now that they're on my email list, we can send them more emails. We can invite them to our conference. We can invite them to our challenge. We can tell them about some of the other things we do. They'll get our weekly podcast, our weekly sales newsletter. And this over time will make it easier for the right people to become clients who we can serve. And so that might be your call to action. Another thing though, in some cases, the call to action isn't necessarily a real offer or a lead magnet. It could just be like, hey, if this resonated with you, I want to encourage you to practice this week. Go ahead and write down in your notes, who's the person you're going to reach out to and share gratitude with this week? I'm waiting. I want you to really think about this and take action on it. Who's in for this challenge to share gratitude with someone you love this week? Awesome. You're nailing it. That can be your call to action. It can be a utilization or an implementation of what you've taught if it's not appropriate for you to have a lead magnet or a real offer. At a wedding, the call to action is raise your glasses to the bride and groom and you cheers, right? That's the call to action. It's the next thing that people are going to do. We want our speech not to just inspire, but to actually lead to something beyond that moment. A cheers, an implementation, an exchange of their email for a free product, in other words, a lead magnet, or for the right people to find it as easy as possible to say yes and join our program and take the next step with us if they want to. That's a call to action. And the final step of the keynote speech is a closing heart story. If you wrap up with a call to action, you say, okay, thanks for having me, that's kind of an awkward conclusion. If we want to end our speech powerfully and be remembered, we should end with a final closing heart story, something that tugs at people's heartstrings again and leaves them with a really wonderful taste in their mouth. And so it could be that you return to the original story, and maybe there's a second ending to the original story that you can tie into the whole speech. Or maybe there's a separate story altogether of something that happened a few years later. You face that same situation that you faced before, and here you are. Or maybe it's just completely different. Like, hey, I want to tell you another story. I now have a 6-year-old at home, and she was experiencing this at school, and I said this, and she said that. And I said, wow, that's a fulfillment of the dream, the dad that I wanted to become. What an amazing God moment. Let's create more of these God moments in your lives as well. God bless you all. See ya. Whatever, that can be the end of your speech. It can be that closing heart story, just something that people are smiling, they're feeling something. It could also be a Bible verse. In some cases, as a Christian leader, you're speaking, you could close with a story that's not yours. It's the story of Jesus. It's the story of somebody else, inspirational, that fits and concludes the speech really well. Or it could be just a final thought, a final tip, a final key, a final word of encouragement. But we want to have that conclusion beyond the call to action. So if you're with me, this is what we're looking for a keynote speech. Number 1, an opening heart story. Number 2, a clear body of our teaching oftentimes represented in numbers: 3 keys, 5 secrets, 7 steps to blank. Number 3, a call to action, either an offer or a lead magnet or what to do next. And number 4, a closing heart story. Ideally, you don't get into a big introduction of yourself at the beginning. The MC has done that for you. You don't have a big wrap-up conclusion like, okay, that's all I've got. Like, that's not really a powerful way to end. We want to launch right into the story. Your first words when you take the stage, you can just pause for a moment, look at the audience with confidence, and say, and this is something Pete used to talk about too, starting at the climax of the story. 7 years ago today, I was driving and I looked out my window and I saw a tree that reminded me of blank, and that caused me to really begin a process of finding myself at a deeper level. I said, man, I need to be like the leaves of that tree that are falling off. I need to get a fresh start in this new season. That's off the cuff, right? But the point is, 7 years ago, I blank, like right into the climax of the story. Big key moment, not a big introduction prior to that. That's going to capture people more than slowly working your way to the story when you can do it. And the same thing with the conclusion. You wrap up that story and you're like, and so that is how I fell in love with Jesus. And I'm so excited for more of you to deepen your relationship with our King. And you walk off. That's it. And they start cheering. And it's this powerful conclusion. This is a great keynote speech. First step is to design it. Then you want to start to deliver it. Practice is going to help you develop your skill set. Repetition is the key to mastery. We just need to start somewhere. This same structure, by the way, works in a 3-minute speech at a wedding, a 15-minute little keynote, a 30-minute, an hour. We can do all of this with this same structure. And it's the structure I've used over and over and over in my business. And I want to invite you to do the same. God bless you. Have a great week. I'll talk to you all more soon. By the way, if you haven't yet, and you want to check out our Christian Coaches Academy, one of the cool things that happens in our membership community for Christian coaches is that the coaches really encourage each other, but they also create stages for one another. There are many podcast hosts in our Christian Coaches Academy who are looking for great guests. There are many people leading group programs who would love to have a guest speaker come in and talk to their group. So if you want to work on speaking in the presence of other Christian leaders who will encourage you, go to www.f2itribe.com/CCA. That's the letter F, the number 2, the letter I, tribe.com/CCA. See you soon.